finishing Parshas Vayeshev tonight. Okay, so up to Pasuk Chaf. Perek Mem Pasuk Chaf. Vayhi Vayom Hashlishi Yom Holadas Es Paro Vayas Mishtal Chalavadav. So I want to show you like this, that if you look at the next 4 psukim, which are basically describing more or less the fulfillment of what was predicted. So a useful way to look at these psukim is to notice that it's picking up parallels things you had before. In other words, you could look at each part of the pasuk. Vahi b'yom hashlishi. Why does it say Vahi b'yom hashlishi? Because Yosef said Shloshis Yomim. Shloshis Yomim. Okay, but then Yom Holadas es Paroi Vayas Mishtel Chalavodov. That's new. That's not expected. No one said there's going to be a Yom Holadas coming or a Mishteh. Okay, so that's interesting. On the other hand, keep going. Vayisa es Rosh HaMashkim, because Yosef told us HaMashkim. Yisa Paras Veshecha. Ves Rosh Sar Ha'ifim, because he also got a Yisa Paras Veshecha. Me'alecha. B'seich Avadav. That goes along with this new information that there was a Mishteh L'chol Avadav. Okay, so there's something new over here. There's specific how it occurred, that there was a Yom Holadas and there was a Mishteh. Vayoshev is, as Yosef told him, V'hashivcha. Vayoshev es HaMashkim al mashkehu. And here you see it even more, because al mashkehu, this word mashkehu, of course we had the same word in Pasuk Yud Gimel, Asher ha'yisa mashkehu. And there it means that you would give him to drink. There it's a verb. Here it's a noun. Ibn Ezra points out. On his position of his mashkiness, whatever. Right? So, but the point is, I think the fact that it has actually a different meaning just is mechazik the idea that the pasuk is creating a parallel. We can use the exact same words to the extent we can, because the whole point of these psukim is to say that what was supposed to happen did happen, right? Vayitan hakoyis al kaf paroi, exactly as in his dream. Welcome. Yeah, I pulled in for you.
Oh, thank you.
You're here for the end of Vayeshev. Finishing Vayeshev. Okay. Yeah. Okay. And then Vayitan HaKois al Kaf Paroi, of course, parallels the language from the dream. Vayitan HaKois al Kaf Paroi. Ve'es Sar Ha'oifim Tala, as Yosef told him, this Salah is Chal 8. And one wonders if he took his head off first, because it skips that part. Okay, so we're learning the end of Vayeshev, and what it says in the end of Vayeshev is that exactly as Yosef told him what happened. 3 days later, the whole story, right? Now, the point I made, there's only one point that I made so far, the ikr, that's important for the Hemshech, which is that at the end of Parshas Vayeshev describes how everything that Yosef said is going to happen happened, and in fact uses words and terms that are picking up from earlier in the Parsha and just using the same term to say, okay, what was predicted came true. Uses the same word. But there's something new over here, which is that the pasuk tells us that on the 3rd day, it was Yom Holadas. Oh, I forgot to say the last point. V'lo zachar, obviously, because Yosef told him Kim his katan. Okay, so the pasuk says that the Yom Hashlishi was Yom Holadas es Paroi, and he made a Mishteh. And that's something new, meaning till now the dreams were that in 3 days from now such and such is going to happen. And when it came true, what's introduced is this new event, this new fact, that it was Yom Holadas es Paroi, and there was a Mishteh, which you have to think about this. Besides for what's the meaning of this, what's the significance of this, it's important to note that this is unnecessary for the story. In other words, these guys are in jail. Eventually, they're going to be judged, or someone's going to think about them. And Yosef tells them 3 days from now, you're going to get a judgment, and this is what it's going to be. And the story would have been just fine if, in fact, 3 days later, Paro called them out and said, come, you're being judged, and one was killed and one was brought back to his position, right? So that makes it much more significant that the Yom Holadas es Paro is completely not completely irrelevant, but completely unnecessary for the story to move forward, or for it to take place. For what's important to take place did not require the holadas as power. Right. So we spoke all about that. Right. A lot of, and the Mishnah. Right.
It's
Okay.
a medrash that the custom of a king on his holadas was to pardon
I don't know. What, on your holadas you would pardon criminals?
I thought it was a medrash. It was the custom. Maybe that adds more to the nevuah of Yosef, that his prediction was even bigger, that even though it was his holadas, and even so...
That one's going to die?
Interesting. If I don't remember, maybe it's not true.
I don't know.
Like that.
I don't know. Oh, so right. So we're going to get to that. Right, but I don't know about the pardoning. Okay, that I didn't see.
Okay. I thought it was a
Could be. Look in the Torah Shlema. I did not look at the Torah Shlema today. Okay, so so that's point number one, that the Yom Holadas is significant here. Now, what does Yom Holadas mean? Just the word Yom Holadas, Rashi says, it's not the day that he was born, or maybe it is, but it's the day that he was made to be born. Rashi points out that's the word Yom Holadas. So there's a focus on the fact that there was a Meyaledes who transitive made him, made him be born. Okay, so it's not his birthday; it's his being birthed day.
Delivery.
Yeah, thank you. The day of Paro, right? The day of Paro is delivery. Okay, fine. So that's interesting, just to note that. The third day is Yom Holadas, which, as you mentioned, the Midrashim say, the Targum, Yonis, I think, and the Midrashim say it's Yom Ginusya. Yom Ginusya, which, if you know Yimsat Avodah Zarah, is one of the one of the aids of the Akum is Yom Ginusya, and the Yerushalmi over there says Yom Ginusya Shemalachim, Yom Holadas as Pare. So there's a thing that kings celebrate Yom Ginusya, and it's a Yom Eid. Now I noticed asking, wait a second, the Fnei Edem Shalavi Kchav Shleish Yamim, Asir Lasses Velasses Yimahim, right? And this Yom Ginusya is one of the Eidim, and here Yosef is Shloshis Yomim. He's very busy with the Saramash and Sarif. Something odd just struck me. Let's all keep that in mind. And I think there's something going on about that. That's very important. In fact, Agav just telling to Shloshis Yom Lefnei Eidehem. If you know in Avodah Zarah, the Gemara is a shaila. Does the 3 days include the Eid, or is it not including? And the Maskana is that it's not including. Here, by Yom HaShlishi, so here it is including. Okay, fine. Okay, also Mishta l'chol avadav. So the Pshan pasuk is like this: Vayas Mishta l'chol avadav. He made a party for his avadim. They're the guests. Vayisas rosh mashkim rosh b'soich avadav. Meaning, since he's making a party for all his avadim, so he's being very kind and generous, magnanimous to his servants, and he's inviting them to party with him, so therefore he considers and thinks about the Saramash Sarayfim. So I would think. For some reason Rashi says that he needs the Saramash Sarayfim to serve him. I don't know why Rashi says that. It's a party for the Avodim. The Avodim are the ones, not the ones who are serving, the ones who are being served. So I have no idea why Rashi says that. Okay.
Who served for the last 2 years, whatever,
right? Right, now it does. Right, now there is something very significant here, which is that the Sahamashkim is the one who's speared and the Sarafim dies. It's very appropriate that the Mishta is where the Sahamashkim, because it's a Mishta, that when he's being Mishta. Right, it's a Mishta when he's being noticed. So of course that means that he's a very important position. And Taka the pasuk makes the point, al kaf pare, implying that at the Mishnah, right away was back into his position, right? Because Sarafim Tala that very same day. So we think, that's simple reading. So the point is that Mashkim was there in the Beis HaMishna and doing his job. But still the Vayisa is Rosh HaMashkim. I'm not sure why Rashi says is that he's looking to them to serve him. He thinks about them because he's making a Mishnah. So I'm just on Rashi. Okay, so now why is it important that there's Yom Holadas in the story? So yes, as Shalom said, we spoke about a lot in Keheles, about Yom Hamaves and Yom Hivoldoi, and the fact that there's a Mishnah and Tov Lechas Abeisevelis Mishnah. Okay, we spoke about all those things, but I want to tell you there's something a lot more going on here, more than that's happening here, something new. Okay, which I got to this because I had a question. If this day was Yom Holadas as Pare and he makes a Mishnah, then Miketz Shnasayim Yomim is once again is Yom Holadas, right? So where's the Mishnah? Good question. Fair question.
Fair question.
How come there's no Mishnah? What?
Maybe he was too concerned.
Ah, right. So he can't sleep or he's having weird dreams.
Maybe there was a Mishnah. So
Okay, right. Maybe there was a Mishnah, but right. In other words, it's not so shver.
That's all he remembered.
Right. It might not be so shver because we never ask. Right. Of course, if it's not part, the only way it's a question, and I don't know if it's so shver, is that you read the psukim and what's significant about the day in the end of Parashas Vayeshev is that Yom Holadas as Pare and therefore has to make a Mishnah, and that very same day, 2 years later, has a whole different tone. And the question is whether the psukim by juxtapose are bringing out that point. I never asked Kashas on Mises, right? Can't say Kasha, why didn't Pare make a birthday party? Maybe he did. The question really, if you want to phrase the question correctly, is that is the pasuk by describing January 15th, Pare's birthday, and here's what happens, and then 2 years later, exactly Miketz Shnasayim, which according to some means exactly Yomim, according to some means full 2 years. The point is it was exactly the same day, and here's what was happening. Okay, and especially the Parei Cholim. Not that I know anything about the dictic of this, but Parei Cholim makes everyone very crazy. Starting the Medrash, Yeva Yachaloin Parei. What's Parei Cholim? The Medrash says what? Only Parei dreams, no one else dreams. Like, what does it mean? 2 years. But if it's supposed to be read as okay, here's what happened on this day. He made a birthday party. 2 years later, the same day, Parei was dreaming. In other words, instead of partying, it's what was instead.
Is there a Gemara? I don't know if this is the nature. I
you can ask whatever you want. Ask. No, we don't. Not too much asking because it's recorded, but definitely. No, go ahead. Once you start.
Is there a Gemara that talks about a person having a chaloim mitoich achim l'shtia? I don't remember.
You know the Gemara says
right.
Right. If you have 7 nights without a dream.
What's the Pasha Taish?
I don't know. So very young about Pocket Right.
If it was talking that he made a Mishnah, then the Chalaim of Lavdaf could be an authentic Chalaim.
Right, no, the Gemara says a dream that you have when you're fasting is more significant. That's a Gemara. A dream from the Tigers. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, interesting.
Query whether it was full 2 years because the Egyptians had a lunar calendar. They didn't have a solar one.
Okay.
I don't know what years they
so what? But then it's still his birthday. Whatever they call.
What is called Miketz Shnasayim Yomim?
No, but whoever
years.
But if it's Egyptian years, then it's Egyptian birthday. Are you saying that it's our years and the Egyptians? Okay. Okay. Could be. Anyways, okay. Let's go back to. So now the question's like this. So that was my question. Okay. Fine. But I want to bring you to Yechezkel. So what did we learn so far? So we have that the Torah basically wraps it up, as it were, and everything more or less parallels what happened with introducing 2 new things that are in fact unnecessary for the story, which is the Yom Holadas and a Mishnah. Okay, fine. Just to make sure we're all on the same page, and the fact that it was Yom Holadas, which has an association with Avodah Zarah, according to the Gemara Avodah Zarah, is interesting, especially that Yosef is quite busy with these people who he should be avoiding. He shouldn't be nice of a nicety in mind, right? Okay. So why is Yom Holadas important for the story? And if I think it may be a question that Pasuk says on Yom Holadas Pare makes a Mishnah, and then 2 years later to the day, there's a very different tone, and he's in this Murchai. He doesn't seem to be in the party mood. So what does that mean? That was my question, which I like to repeat. I'm not sure it's shver, even phrasing it the correct way, which is that. I don't know if there's that much mas. But I want to take you to Yechezkel Perek Chof Tes, where I think the answer lies to a lot of what's happening here. Yechezkel Perek Chof Tes, which is the Haftarah to Parshas Va'era, I think. So it goes like this. Yechezkel is told to be menabe on Pare and the whole Mitzrayim, and talk to Pare, the great crocodile. Shalom, yeah? Should we say crocodile? Okay. Who crouches in his yar and says, the river is mine, and I have formed myself. Okay, so he declares that the river is his, and that he has formed himself, which the Midrashim say, the river is mine means the river is my God, and I have formed myself means that I am a God. Okay, so which the other Joshua are very busy with this idea, and it starts in Parshas Miketz where Paro is Oimid al Hayor. The Medrash says, he's standing over his God and tells to this. So that means on the one hand it's his God, on the other hand he's above it because it's his God. Something because he has the river, so then he made himself. I don't know exactly what the theology is. Okay, but that's what it says here. So the pasuk continues. So he thinks he's a God, and in association with the Ya'ar, which of course is the strength of Mitzrayim. They have the Ya'ar, and therefore they're very powerful and very secure and very rich. So the pasuk Yechezkel continues and says, "You're the crocodile, and Hashem is going to pull you out of the river, and all the fish are going to come with you. The fish are all his avodim, right? All the mitzrim, and he's going to throw them into the midbar. Why?" Says pasuk Vav and Zayin, because you were a mishenes kana lebeis Yisrael. That means there was this thing going on that the Bnei Yisrael in times of Yechezkel relied on Mitzrayim for security, and they ended up not helping them, and they're it's like leaning on a reed. Okay, and therefore you can get punished. So there's two things happening here, right? Number one, you think you're a god. That's bad enough, but that's not the issue. The issue is that you're mishenes kana. So which one is it? Okay, and then what's going to happen? Lachein, there's going to be shmama in Mitzrayim v'yodu ki ani Hashem. Again in pasuk Tes it says explicitly, Yan Omar Ya'er Livani Asisi. So in pasuk Vav it says Yan that you were mishenes kana. In pasuk Tes it says because Yan you said the river is yours, and therefore I'm going to basically make you chayav shmama and for 40 years. Okay, and then pasuk Yud Gimel Miketz Arba'im Shana Akabetz Es Mitzrayim, and I'm going to bring them back to Eretz Mechurasam, to the land of their birth, meaning the land where they came from, and they're going to be on the Melacha Shvala, and they're not going to be Snase on the Goyim. In pasuk Tezayin, V'lo yeh oid lebeis Yisrael lemivtach mazkir oven. Meaning when Bnei Yisrael relies on them, it's mazkir oven. When they rely on Mitzrayim, it ends up bringing avoinus to Bnei Yisrael. So here's another knetch over here. Not just that they were a false security for Bnei Yisrael, but that when Bnei Yisrael relied on them, it was mazkir oven. Okay, so there's 3 points: that they think they're gods, and that they're undependable, and depending on them causes mention of Avain for Bnei Yisrael. Right? See that? Okay. So here's what I want to tell you: that there's no birthday party 2 years later, because 2 years later he said that he made himself. And a birthday party is a delivery party, right? He was delivered. He was taken out by a holodet. You know that Paro has this obsession with holodet. Well, that had something to do with this too. I'm not sure what, but it has something to do with this. And 2 years later, he dreams that he is superior to the river, which basically means, as Yechezkel says, you made yourself, or like Mechuyev HaMetzias, I guess, something like that. I don't know what making yourself means. Does that mean to get some metaphysics here? Sadi Goyen says nothing can make itself, because before it is, what is there to make itself? But kadmus, you could fathom the idea that something could exist forever. Anyways, but basically, so Ani Yasisini means, I'm saying Ani Yasisini means I'm a god and I'm forever, and therefore there's no birthday party. No birthday party. What? True. It's ticking. Right. And if some say, no. See, some say in Pshat over there in that passage, Ani Yasisini means I get credit for my success. Right. But the measure that says Ani Yasisini means that he's saying he's a god. That suggests that he's saying
something superior.
No. The measure makes the point that Hu Asanu V'lo Yanachnu, Hashem, we say Hashem made us and we didn't make ourselves. Right, with an aleph, because that's ksiv. And Paro said that he formed himself. Something only a god could do, meaning he exists because he's a god, and he doesn't need a siba. Okay, no. If no one's masking, we can stop here. I think
I'm not denying this, but if he's only saying I get credit for everything that I am and everything I did, he's also not giving credit to his birth.
Oh yeah, you think so? Okay, right. I guess so. Right. He's saying there's nothing to talk about except for me. Right. Yeah. Right. So we don't talk about his origins. We don't. Right. Agreed. Right. In other words, all credit is due to him. So why would you celebrate the fact that he was born to whatever he was born if everything about him is he's a self-made man, basically.
Which is
Self-made man does not
It's
celebrate his
odd-
birthday.
Which is odd if you were the son of a king.
Right. Okay. Yes. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. It's pretty interesting. I think that's a good point. I think that is the key point, actually. The point you just made. But let's leave that. Okay. So I want to suggest that there's no birthday 2 years from them because he's dreaming that he's on the Yar, and therefore he's a god. Now, what does it say in Yechezkel? It says in Yechezkel that if you dream that you're a god, or if you think you're a god, then you deserve to get shmama, right? So what's and Mitzrayim deserves to be chayrev. It shouldn't be anyone. It shouldn't be inhabitable, which is mamish with Pari. Pari had his dream that there's going to be a rav, and if not for Yosef, Taka it would have been the Mitzrayim, right? So and that's the point. The point is because he's Oymen Aliyah, because he thinks that he's God, because he has the river. So he's getting a message. He's getting the message of Yechezkel, basically, that no, you can't rely on your river. You can't rely on yourself. Don't think so highly of yourself, right? Okay, now.
Well, the river is what gives them their crop.
Exactly, and the rivers L'chayra can never go dry, and that's why whenever there's a rav in Sefer Bereishis, you go down to Mitzrayim, right? You go to Mitzrayim, but oh no, here's a new idea that all of a sudden Mitzrayim could actually lose their security, which is how's that? How's that happen? How could there be a rav in Mitzrayim? Okay, but there's something about the fact that they took their security and they made it they deified it, or deified himself even. Now, what happened there in Yechezkel? He said two things. He says three things, right? He says you're a god, and then Bnei Yisrael relies on you, and you're not dependable, and it's mazgir oven to Bnei Yisrael when they depend on you. So I think it's all the same thing because the Bnei Yisrael depends on Mitzrayim's might. If Mitzrayim's might was not imaginary might, wasn't that they thought they were a god, if they understood what the might was, in fact, then they would be dependable. And it wouldn't be mazgir oven. Because what's wrong? They have power. Well, why do they have power? Because Hashem gave them power. Say it's part of the system of Hashem's world, and of course you can work with it. Nothing wrong with that. But because their might is might that's really koyach medume, this imaginary thing that they think that they're God. So therefore they're unreliable, and not only they're unreliable, but therefore when Bnei Yisrael relies on them, it's mazgir of them because here you're relying on some sort of a desire, right? So now going back to Yosef, this is mamash our story. Yosef relies on the Sam Ashkim, and it's a problem. This business of relying on Mitzrayim as demonstrating some lack of bitachon, and the Nevi'im are busy with that, and it's a problem that you're relying on Mitzrayim. This starts from Yosef Kim Zachtani Itcha, and the Zachar Sam Ashkim is Yosef Eshkechei. Why? Why not? What's so bad about him? Oh, because look where things are going. Because next thing you know is Hini Oymen Aliyah. So you see that Mitzrayim has some religious problems. Okay? And another thing it says in Yechezkel is Miketz Abam Shana. So I said, oh, very geschmack. Miketz Shasayim Yom, Miketz Abam Shana. And so Rashi in Yechezkel brings a medrash that the Miketz Abam Shana is because really the Rav, the Pari dreamt about, was supposed to be 42 years. Why? Because if you look at Parashas Miketz, it talks about Sheva Paris, the bad-looking ones, and the Sheva Shibal, the bad-looking ones. It mentions them 3 times. Sheva, 3 times it says Sheva in a bad way, and then that's 21. And he said, and then he repeated it to Yosef. It gets to 42, and there were only 2 years of hunger, right? Kizesh L'Sayim Hu Rav B'Kev Arts when Yaakov came. So maybe there's still 40 years that have to be paid up.
That's if you hold
It's mamish the same story. What?
That's if you say they didn't have the other 5.
The what?
That they didn't have
Right. He's going with the medrash that when Yaakov came, it stopped. So there's 40 years of that they still.
Again, according to the version that says it didn't start off again.
Yeah. So there's 40 years, right? So there's 40 years of Rav that are left for Mitzrayim to pay up. And what it says in Yechezkel is what's the problem with Mitzrayim is you say you're God and you're Mishenes Kon HaRatz. It's mamish these 2 things. There are these 2 psukim, right? The Yosef relies on him. And now, when did Yosef rely on him? On the Yom Genusya. That's not good. Because it's Avodah Zarah. That's the point. Yosef is being nice in B'Yom Edom, and that's the problem. The problem is that there's a shaychus of Avodah Zarah here, as it says in Yechezkel, and that's expressed by Pari Oymen Aliyah, and that's goof for why you can't rely on Mitzrayim and why it's mazgir oven to rely on them. Okay, so that's why just another point why I think the Holodet is important. First of all, because it's an association with Avodah Zarah, but also because I'm Semit. Meaning I don't know for sure, but that there's Yom Holodet, but then 2 years later, it's look where it goes is that this guy doesn't even have a birthday anymore, right? Because he's such a god. Okay, fine. One more thing in Yechezkel, just one more thing it says over there. Right, just one more point. In Yechezkel it says that the pasuk says Mikeh. This is the end of Perek Test. There it says after 40 years, Mitzrayim is going to come back. Which is in pasuk Perek Test pasuk Yud Daled. Al Eretz Mechurasam. Al Eretz Mechurasam. Eretz Mechurasam means, what does Mechurasam mean? So there's another pasuk in Yechezkel Perek Dezayin where it talks about Moldei Sayach u'Mechurei Sayach. Pasuk in Yechezkel Perek Dezayin, pasuk Gimel. Mechurei Sayach u'Moldei Sayach. So Rashi brings over there that Mechurei Sayach means your birthplace. So when it says that, so okay, their birthplace. Now it says in Yechezkel, in Perek Tes, that after Mitzrayim learns the lesson, Hashem is going to bring them back to their birthplace, where they're going to be Mamlacha Shfala. And they're not going to be Misnasi on the Goyim. So what's the point of saying the birthplace? That perhaps the pshat is because, okay, if the birthplace means that's where they belong. Here they were being Misnasi on the Goyim, thinking that they're this world power. And really, they're locally, they belong there in Hanami, but just there, right? And that is expressed by the fact that that's their birthplace. So similarly, in our story, Paro's birth indicates his humble beginnings, and that he's not a god. But then, next thing you know, he thinks that he's or himself, or is the cause of his own success. Okay. And one more point, this I'm not sure about either, that over there the Yechezkel says he's going to take out Pare from the river, and all the fish are going to come with him, right? All the fish means all his avodim. So here there's a mishteh, and Pare is nice to say all his avodim, and notably Yosef doesn't get any attention because Yosef is not an Eved of Pare, right? And that's a good thing because Pare and his avodim is like the crocodile in the river who thinks that he's the god of the river, and the Savadim are like the fish in the river, and they're all going to be with him. They're all going to go to the midbar. That means all going to suffer the Rav. The only one who's going to protect them from the Rav is the one who's not from the Avdei Pari. So Vayas Mishta L'chal Avadav, Vayis Esrei Shamaskim, Beshvei Saharifim, B'Seich Avadav, but not Yosef, because it's important that Yosef is not associated. And right there, when Yosef tried to associate him with them, that's not good. Because these are bad people. Because look what happens. Pare thinks he's a god. So there's this distinction between Pare and his minions and their mishteh, which maybe is like because the yar is liquid, and that's their power comes from the yar. And Yosef, who's supposed to not be part of that, and when he does make himself part of that, that's mazkir oven. It's not a good thing to rely on. Okay, now I want to show you some other parasha in Keheles. Okay, I want to show you some other psukim in Keheles, which have something to do with our parsha. Again, something, but I don't know what. In this case, but it tells us it will be mashlim something at least. This is in Keheles, Perek Daled. Keheles Perek Daled pasuk Yud Gimel. So for the whole Sahar Mashkim Sahar Ofen parasha, Keheles has been frequently cited, right? We know that already. Okay, and so I'm not going to go back, I'm not going to give you all the background. This is referring to this. But in Perek Daled Pasuk Yud Gimel, it says that the Yeled Miskein V'Chacham is better than the Melech Zokin V'Chsil Asher Lo Yad Ali Zohar Oid. So I said this talking about Yosef and Pare, and in fact the Medrash says this. The Melech Zokin V'Chsil is Pare. Why is he a Melech Zokin V'Chsil? And Yosef is the Yeled, of course, because he's a Nar, and he's Miskein, he doesn't have anything, but he's the Chacham. And he's better than Pare because Pare doesn't know how to watch out for the future. Right? Because Pare would have no idea that the Rav is coming. So he would lead Mitzrayim to ruin. And Yosef is the one who's better than him. He could protect Mitzrayim. And of course, the next pasuk says, "Kimi beis hasurim yotzalim." He went out of jail to become king. Now the Medrash says this, and the Medrash says, "Why is Pari the Melech Zaken uksil?" Because he said he was Ayman al Yar, because he thinks he's better than his God. He doesn't understand his priorities. He thinks if he has the Yar, he's better than the Yar. Okay, and then pasuk Gidal says, "Gigamba malchusay noilad rush." I have no idea what this means. I could teach it in pshat, but I just want to start to our parsha that there's a yom huledes, right, and a malchus, okay, and then 2 psukim later it says ein kates l'chol ha'am. Again, you have to understand it in context and what the tzushtel is, but Yosef expects it to be the kates, right? Yosef expects that his kates is on this day. He's supposed to come out of jail and rule right now. That's what he expects, but in fact it's ein kates, and he had to wait till mikates shentayim yomim. And then you go to Perek Hey, and Perek Hey speaks about dreamers. And this we spoke about at length, how dreams are problematic, right? Pasuk Beis B'Chalayim B'Roiv Inyan, and a dream is associated with Exil. Okay, we spoke about that a lot in the beginning of the Parshas Vayeshev. And Pasuk Vav is Chaloimis and Havolim Dvarim Harbe Kias Elokim Yirah. Yosef had to eventually become a Yireh Elokim, which he did. He says Elokim and Yireh. Okay, fine. Now I just want to make one more point. The pasuk over there says, going back to pasuk Gimel, it says the old king is Lo Yoda Li Zahir. Okay, so I don't know pshat in this, but it's worth noting. There's a Yom Huledes of Pare, on which the Sahamashkim doesn't remember Yosef, right? And then this week's parasha, there's a Melech Chodosh who's Lo Yoda as Yosef. And since he's Lo Yoda as Yosef, he calls them Miyaldes to start killing babies, right? So there's something about Miyaldes, it seems, and Yosef. And not only that, so just in Kehelis where it says Lo Yoda Li Hizor, so there's a king who's Lo Yoda as Yosef, and he does very foolish things. Yosef has a connection to Leda. The pasuk says, Yosef yulad shnei banim, and Yaakov told him, and what? Oh, very good. And the biggest one is that it says, Vayar Yosef Ephraim b'nei Shilesh and Gam b'nei Machir b'nei Masha Yuldu al bircha Yosef. We're born on Yosef's knees. Now, it doesn't mean they're born on Yosef's knees. It says of Rambam and Rambam, not that Yosef acted like the Miyaledes, which is Pashup Pshat. Because born on his knees means he sat there and caught the baby. That's what Miyaledes does. No, it means he raised them, like Targum says. But I'm saying the Pashup Pshat, the Pasuk is that Yosef is there to help with the birth. Okay, and I think that's something to do with Parshas Shmos, that when Lo Yodas Yosef, so Mela, now we could get the Miyaldas to kill. I have no idea what the pshat is. And Yosef's brachas, of course, V'yidugula Rev, V'karavarats, and Ben Pyrus to be fruitful and multiply. So there's probably something going on with that, but I don't know what the pshat is. Okay, now I want to show you one more thing in Keheles. Go weiter in Keheles, Perek Hey, the Iker from Psukim Yud Aleph and on, which we're going to look at soon. Tell us more about the birthdays, the significance of Yom Huledes, and things that we can learn on the get to the end of Parashat Vayeshev. But before we get to that starts from Pasuk Aleph. But I want to start it from Pasuk Zayin, just to show you these Pasukim also seem to have a shaycha. So the beginning of the parak talks about, be careful what you say. God is in the heaven and you are on the earth. We spoke about that a lot in the beginning of Vayeshev. And about dreams, and about Nedarim. Yaakov had a dream and he woke up and he made a neder. Okay, Shane. And now let's go to Pasuk Zayin. Pasuk Zayin says that if there's oishik and stealing and justice and righteousness in the Medina, don't be surprised. Okay, fine. There was a mishpat in Parshas Vayeshev. I'm not sure if that's it was inside Parshas Vayeshev. Then it talks about how the king ultimately is enslaved to the Sadeh. Okay, Pari ultimately depended on the food. Then it talks about how to deal with money and Tvua. Okay, Yosef deals with the Kesef and the Tvua. And then it talks about when there's a ribu of Toiva, how everyone wants to eat it. That's the 7 years of hunger, but you have to be careful. You have to know what's coming and plan for the future. Don't let everyone eat it. And then now we're starting the Iker points. In Pasuk Aleph talks about someone who has so much Soiva that he can't sleep. Pare, right? He's Ayman al because he has so much saifa. At least he thinks he has so much saifa. I mean, he did, and then he's by the spy murcha. He has these weird dreams. He doesn't know what to make of them, and that's because actually the saifa is going to turn into rav, and that's the next pasuk, that you could have someone could have great wealth, and it could turn into raw, and he could lose that oisher. V'hoiled bain. So a person could lose all his wealth, have a child who has nothing, just like he left his mother's womb naked. He can go back to the grave and not take mu'uma. So what the pasuk means is like this, and just like he came, so too he goes, which means like this: a person is born with nothing, and the pasuk is saying, "Oh, look, a person's born with nothing," and that should tell you it's very easy to go back with nothing, right?
Remember that you were born.
Remember that you were born. So the fact that you were born and you came out of a beten, what do you have from a beten? Nothing. You came out naked, right? So the delivery, it's not just that he was born. It's that he was delivered. Delivered is a message that, wait a second. So you think you have so much wealth, you're so powerful, but Lamaisa, don't forget where you came from, right? Basa, you're nothing. You started off as nothing, in which case you could also end up with nothing. And that itself is a message to Pare, who has this soiva and doesn't realize that it can end up being raw, and that's because he's not taking the message of his Yom Holodet. Ad kedei kach, if you go with my first vote, he's like, I don't like talking about Yom Holodet. He didn't want to talk about his Yom Holodet anymore, because he completely doesn't understand this, right? And he needs Yosef to tell him this point that you could lose it. So Yosef knows the secret of birthdays, basically, and Pare doesn't. Another way to say it, right? Okay, so gam kol yom b'chosh fine, etc., etc. And then the pasuk says, so what's a good thing in life? When you have some good, use it. I'm not sure exactly how that answers, but then the parak ends. Ki alakim ma'aneh b'simchas libay. Whatever Hashem gives you is Hashem is trying to make you happy and appreciate it, something like that. And that's where Yosef told Pare, halakim ya'aneh, that's Shleim Pare, right? Okay. Accept what you have and appreciate what you have, because God is giving you something. Whatever He's giving you is something good, and you should accept it from Hashem, something like that. Don't take it for granted. So that's what Yosef told Pare. You thought you have wealth and you have all the might and you're invincible, right? But in fact, you were born like everyone else. Don't forget 2 years ago. Don't forget today's your birthday, I guess, Yosef telling him, right? Really, we should find a remez that Yosef tells him it's his birthday. According to this Shtikatayr, there should be a remez in Parashas Miketz, right? That when Yosef is paisa the Chalaim, there should be some remez to birthdays, because that's the real message to Pari. Don't forget it's your birthday, and a birthday means that you could lose everything because you were born with nothing. Okay, we'll have to see if that's there. Okay, right. Fine. That is that. So that's another message of the birthday. Now, I want to say one last thing.
Maybe it's not crazy that the other place where we were saying Shabbanis,
right,
is a bit later. They understood that they were off, but they, I don't know.
Interesting. Mamish this Holidet Bain. I mean, they see over here in Kehelis.
So the Indian of
right. Okay, I want to say one last thing, and this, what this is going to do is, I guess it will be like a little bit of a schus. We're going to darish l'schus Yosef, so that will be a good way to end. Okay, so what do we learn so far? So what we learned so far is that Yom Holodet is significant because it means he's immortal, and soon he's going to be immortal. Next thing you know, he's going to think he's immortal. And not only that, not just as Yom Holodet means he's mortal, but L'maisa, it leads, the Yom Holodet Shemalachim is a dangerous day, and it leads to Avodah Zarah, and therefore, and the Spitz Avodah Zarah was the first pasuk of Parashas Miketz, where he thinks he's God. Not Stam Avodah Zarah, but he thinks he's God, and that's why you can't rely on them, and that's what's going on. That's the first thing we spoke. Another thing is that the fact that he's born means, okay, you're born naked, and you could go back naked, and Pare soon forgets that, right? Pare soon forgets that, and he has to be reminded that. Meaning, soon forgets that, right? He has no idea what to make of his dream. And Yosef comes back and tells him that. Okay.
It's significant that he's Melech Mitzrayim who forgets that, because he has the other, he has going Savas Lechem and other kingdoms.
For sure. Yeah, undoubtedly. Yes, Mitzrayim is the most secure, right? It's a symbol of security, correct? For sure.
At least it was.
Right. Right, it's interesting because in V'hayim Shemaya, which is contrasted, with contrast Eretz Otam Mitzrayim, it ends Manibu Yemechem Yemevnechem. So maybe there's something there. Kashnish B'Hashem Laveseichem. There's something about generations. There in Kehelis, by the way, you have to learn it better. But there in Kehelis, where it says Ein Kates, it says Ein Kates Achalachayim, which means basically Dar Holich V'Dar Badis. There in Kehelis, it's just one after the other. Of course, Leda tells us that too. Leda tells us that you're not Kadmoin, and it tells us you're not eternal, because you Kol Hayven Nifsad, whatever. If you come to be in the end, of, like that pasuk, you come to be, M to be. It's all it's a cycle. Right. Right. But there's no Kates. Right. Meaning Kehelis denies the idea of a Kates. What do you mean a Kates? Kates is like, there's ends. There's no ends. Just the same thing over and over and over. Which is also related to later. But I don't understand it fully.
Just throwing out one thing. I don't know if it's just hysterical.
Yeah.
The same day that Yosef came out of the Surah, the contrast between Yosef and Paro is also the same day that all that chorus were nifted. Right.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Very interesting. Very, very interesting. You know, Tzaddik probably talks about it. Tzaddik has a Peiket Ikrim, I think his name is. What's it Sefer called? That was called, So he talks a lot about that Gemara. No, very good. It's stung to Yosef, right? Yosef just very good, right? Yosef Yosef Beis Hasum is the day of Pekida. Very good, Avada. It's a birthday. It's a birthday. It's a day to be born, right? Or it's a day to be nifkid, anyways. What? It's very interesting. It's a very good point.
Sort of like that.
Very good point. Let's look into that.
His great grandmother sort of like that. What do you mean? When she was taken, everyone stopped having children. When she was left, that started again.
So when Yosef comes out of jail, right? Right, the more lists together, right? No, that's a big point. Right. Leaving jail and birthdays. Okay, very interesting, right?
So leaving jail is like a birthday.
Okay, one last thing. Yes, that could also be the shail, the great, the bar, the be'er tzara nachriya. I mean, the isha, right? He went to the bar because of the isha, so it's like coming out of the bar, coming out of the womb, for sure. Okay, one last thing. So in Yirmiyah Perek Chaf, goes like this. Yirmiyah Perek Chaf pasuk Zayin. I'll tell you b'kitzah. Let's wrap it up. Do this quickly. Yirmiyah Perek Chaf, from pasuk Zayin till the end of the Perek, skipping one pasuk basically, except for pasuk Yud Gimel, is really including from pasuk Zayin till the end of the Perek is Yirmiyah bemoaning his situation, which is that everyone's loyal to him, and he has to bring all this terrible nevuos to people, and he's in very bad shape. But he can't help it. He can't stop it. Okay, and here's Dibas Rabim Mogor Misaviv, people planning to get him. Okay, now, not to repeat, just to remind, just to mention, spoke a lot about Yirmiyah being thrown into a pit, and Yirmiyah is like Yosef, and here he is. Shamati Dibas Rabim is like Shamati Oimim Nilchod Dasoina, which Rashi says, right? They have plots against you. So Yosef heard Diba, that they're out to get him. And Yirmiyah had the Dvar Hashem that he was bearing him, he couldn't hold it back. Yosef also, V'aviv Shamar Sadavar, he has a message which is dangerous for him, and it's better if he would keep quiet, but he can't. Okay, fine. And then Yirmiyah says, in Pasuk Yud Daled, he says like this, he curses the day that he was born. Orah hayoyim asher yuladati, yoyim asher yuladasni imi al yivarach. Orah ha'ish asher bisaras avilema yuladacha ben zachar samech simchov. Cursed be the man that brought the news to my father. Oh, you had a baby boy. V'haya ha'ish ahu ka'aram asher hafach Hashem v'lo nicham. Okay, what did that guy do wrong? It's a Pella. I think Chaznish has a piece on this somewhere in the back of Tyrus, right? You know about? Oh, I think the Chaznish like, what's going on over here? How could he see like he wishes he wasn't born? What's going on? What? Yeah, and then he curses out the guy that brought the news to his mother, to his father. If only I would have been killed in the womb, and my mother would have been my grave. Oh, right, the mother in the grave. Okay, fine. So that's what he says. Yes, and Erev Perek Gimel is Mamish is back basically saying Perek, and that also might have something to do with Yosef. Okay. So Yirmiyah says the day I was born should be cursed, it shouldn't be blessed, and the man that told my father the news should be. Okay, I want to show you another place in Yirmiyah. I'm sorry, in Perek Yud Zayin in Yirmiyah, more famous psukim. Perek Yud Zayin pasuk Hey, Koyamar Hashem Orah Hageva Sheyiftach Ba'Adam. Right, and there in pasuk Zayin Baruch Hageva Sheyiftach B'Hashem. Okay, going on Yosef, right. That's in Yud Zayin, Perik Yud Zayin, Psukim Hey and Zayin. Or that Yosef should have trusted in Hashem and not in man, right? On Perik Yud Zayin, Pasuk Hey and Zayin. It's a very obscure medrash. Some people actually learn that the Baruch HaGever is Yosef. But Pashtas, everyone says Ora HaGever is Yosef, right? So I want to say that Yirmiyah over here, what? Right. Right. I want to say over here, Yirmiyah says the day I was born should be Ora and shouldn't be Baruch. So I want to say like this. That there's a taina on Yosef, right? That on the Yom Huledes, he should have been Baruch, not Ora, right? He should have been B'teach B'Hashem. Maybe that means working with the Sahar Eifim, not the Sahar Mashkim, whatever. But here Yirmiyah is saying that if the day has no tzad bracha, right? He's saying his birthday, we has no tzad bracha, then there's no possibility to be. There's no given that it's Yom Huledes his par. I mean, it's just an associative thing. I don't know. It's just the association would suggest that given that it's Yom Huledes his par, so there's no way to get any bracha from it, and therefore there's nothing Yosef could do. It's inevitable because it's the day of Ali Baruch. Okay?
You couldn't be
Baruch.
You couldn't be a
Baruch HaYodea. Let's end with that.
You couldn't be a Baruch again?
Right, that's what I'm suggesting because it's a day that's okay, Mazel Tov.